After drawing for most of my life, I went back to learn the basics. And in this video, I'm discussing how to stop procrastinating, get the practice you need, and actually enjoy the process. Hi, my name is Hane, and I'm writing a story that I want to turn into a graphic novel. I'm completely immersed in the writing process right now, but even though I want to make this graphic novel, I haven't been drawing consistently for years. I did used to draw a lot, but mainly for fun, and I wasn't being intentional about practicing the basic skills. I also haven't ever taken any drawing classes. So now is the time to get the necessary practice because I need the skills. My goal with this story is to draw it properly, so I have to have a good grasp on the skills. If you want to take your work to the next level, I think it's important to take some time to practice the basics because that's what's going to give you the necessary foundation to unleash your creativity. If you don't, you might keep getting frustrated because your sketch just doesn't look good and instead there seems to be something off. Or you don't even know how to make the basic sketch, and so you aren't able to focus on the more interesting part, which is imagining something and making it come to life on paper. But then on the other hand, it might be hard to get motivated to practice because you have to do a lot of repetitive work. Personally, I'm not as motivated anymore to draw consistently because it doesn't feel as enjoyable as it used to be. Now I have to be intentional and make the drawings that are required, not the ones I want to make. It's a time when you're not actually making progress on what you wanted to do originally, which is to draw what you imagined or to make something for fun. We'll talk a little later in this video about how to actually want to do the practice, but first let me show you how I prepared for the practices before moving on. Making a plan. I started by deciding what skills I was going to focus on first. Since what I want to draw is a comic, I had to look at what skills are needed to create that sort of medium. My comic is going to be manga style and in black and white, or at least that's what I know now. And so from that, we can take the following ideas. Shading and being able to add details are going to be very important aspects to add volume to shapes. Since it's a graphic novel and in manga style, I only need a certain dose of realism. The bodies, although I want to draw them well and use different body types, don't have to be very detailed, so I don't have to worry about learning all about muscles and facial features and things like that. I don't like exaggerated features in my characters, like overly big eyes and hair. So I do have to figure out how to make them a little more realistic. I want to create rich backgrounds because they actually tell part of the story, and so I have to practice drawing all sorts of places. My story takes place mainly in the city, but there will also be some natural environments and others. And I will have to draw many scenes from an aerial view, so that already encompasses a bunch of skills. I will need to draw machinery, weapons, and industrial environments. With that in mind, I made a list of the things that I think I want to practice, loosely in order of priority. I haven't done an investigation at this point to list all of the skills that I will need to develop, just because I feel like I have enough to start with at this point. This is my list: body, perspective, backgrounds, clothes and accessories, shading, machines and technology, animals. For this video, I ignored the fact that I had put bodies in the first place and immediately skipped to perspective. I think it's because it's an itch that I've been feeling that I don't know perspective, and it feels good to finally be able to scratch it and get some practice in.
Supplies.
What I'm using for these practices is just normal office supplies. Specifically, I tend to want to draw just with a pencil, but sometimes I also use a mechanical pencil when I want to make fine and sharp lines. A razor and a feather to brush off the eraser residue are also key supplies. For the paper, I use normal A4 office paper, 80 grams. I prefer loose sheets because it allows me to spread out my work if I want to look at several sheets simultaneously. I use both sides of the sheets. I also have a few rulers, one big, one small, and a clear plastic triangular one. To teach myself the skills, I will be using the books I already have and videos and articles that I find on the internet. I don't feel like I need more right now. Once I use up what I have and what I can easily find, then we'll see. Specifically, I'll be using this book by Andy Smith that I've had forever now, and that is also specific to the story I'm making since it's about superheroes. It's called Drawing Dynamic Comics, although mine is in Spanish. Another book that I use is the Perspective Drawing Handbook. It has detailed explanations about how everything works, and it includes many drawings that show the different techniques. I'll also use this book of the series Drawing Manga because it includes a lot of scenes in perspective that I want to practice with. But I think whatever book you happen to have is good, at least until you have fully acquired the skills that it teaches. Then you can always go look for more.
The process.
Now it's time to actually practice, but with some sort of method. I like acting as my own teacher, and what it is basically is observing the process instead of only doing the process. While I draw, I maintain an internal dialogue about what I'm drawing and why it's turning out the way it does. For example, when I was doing these boxes, I couldn't figure out why they looked wrong to me, but I knew I was doing something wrong. I had decided to experiment with a slanted horizon line, but I didn't know where to put the lines for the boxes. So I'm asking myself, what do I have to change to make this look good? Eventually, I figure out that since the box is above the horizon line, you should be seeing the bottom of the box, not the top. If I draw it like I first did, it looks like a meteor that is falling straight down. And then I learned that I could draw the boxes not parallel to the horizon line so that they look like meteors or spaceships. I learned that by asking, what happens if I don't draw the box parallel to the horizon line? That way you can show a lot more movement. On the page you just see boring boxes, but in my head I was imagining what I could be drawing with their help.
Practicing.
I decided to start by learning what I thought would be the two most important skills to draw a comic, which are the human body and perspective. I ended up doing perspective first. So I'm just taking sheets of paper and covering them with shapes more or less tightly. Since it's recommended to start by putting boxes into perspective because you can then draw almost any shape from that, that's what I did. Next, I moved on to draw the human body. Here are a few takeaways from my session so far.
I did forget to use the mic, but now we're good, I think. So I do have a basic understanding of perspective, But when I started practicing, I realized that I don't really understand how it works. I mean, in theory, yes, because depending from where you look, you can see different parts of things, but I didn't know how to draw the lines to make them converge at the vanishing point. For example, I made this shape intuitively, but then I realized that for the block or box to look like this, the horizon would have to be slanted. I've been realizing how much of what you have to learn about drawing is not actually how to do something, but when to apply a specific technique or other. Here I wanted to see how to draw, for example, a bookcase with books in it that are not specifically straight, but maybe tilted to one side, maybe leaning on the side of the bookcase. I realized that maybe I shouldn't try to experiment with all sorts of situations because maybe the ones in the book are the only ones you need. I have been asking myself how much perspective you really need to know, or how much about drawing, anything for that matter, to make drawings that look good. I think the answer is to learn, apply what you have learned, and keep an open mind, but not worry too much about all the other things that maybe you don't know about yet. You just don't need to know everything to make something that's decent. On the contrary, it will hold you back from actually doing anything. I moved on to the human body and started by figuring out how to do the proportions. For the moment, I settled on a 7-head proportion because that's what looks best to me, and I had a million questions. For example, if you want to make the man taller than the woman, do you just make his head bigger? It does make sense unless you think about it too much, I guess. But then for the children, I needed to use different proportions. For the baby, it's 3 heads, and for the 8 to 12-year-old child, I thought 5 heads would look good. But then what about this woman with a much smaller head than the other adults, but still a 7-head proportion? I think I just have to make all the heads of the adults similar and don't overthink it. How to want to practice. So now let's talk about how to actually get yourself to do the work. I'm a huge procrastinator on things that I don't want to do, either because I don't enjoy doing them, or they seem too hard to do, or to take too much time. It has cost me a lot of time and energy to find solutions to get me to do what I have to do, but I have finally managed to find a few things that work for me. To get you to do something that you are procrastinating on, you have to focus on 1, why you want to do it, 2, building the habit, and 3, on getting rewards from doing that activity, since otherwise you will give up sooner or later. So let's see a few tips to do just that. Your why. Depending on what motivates you specifically, you could do one or a combination of these things. Your why is your important reason for wanting to improve your drawing skills. It provides you with the motivation to find out how to make yourself do the hard work. Sometimes your why is enough on its own when it makes it feel rewarding to do the steps to get you to your goal. For example, in my case, I am much more motivated to practice now because I want to acquire a certain skill set to be able to do my graphic novel, and it feels good to do something about it. Building the habit. assign a time. Decide when you are going to practice and set aside a block of time for doing just that. You need to be clear about when you are going to practice so that you don't let distractions take away that time from you. Group practice. You could join a group of artists to practice together, or join productivity YouTube sprints. That way you're not alone in your efforts, and sharing gives a sense of meaning. I'm not in a face-to-face group, but I enjoy YouTube sprints where people write together or work together in Pomodoro type chunks of time. It also keeps me motivated to do sprints on my own, because once you get used to a way of working, you tend to keep doing it. Mindfulness and meditation. Clearing your head and focusing on the moment can be a powerful tool. It can make your thoughts about how you're tired or you don't want to do it or whatever it is fade away and leave you to savor some moments of peace and meaningfulness. I don't like the idea of meditation very much, but every time I do it, the sense of peace makes it very worth it. Suddenly you see what's important and what not, and it makes it much easier to connect with yourself and your internal power. I think when you don't want to do something but you're thinking you should do it because it's important, there is an internal struggle going on. Meditation can calm the resistance and make you accept that you're just going to do it. I don't do anything special. I just sit there and look, but without trying to see anything specific, and I listen to the sounds that surround me. I also feel my body, but again, not trying to feel anything specific. In that moment, I feel like I'm really present, but I don't have any other goal than just being here. I do that for a few minutes, preferably after setting an alarm, and when I'm done, I can feel the difference it makes. Rewards. External rewards. Set specific goals and reward yourself when you achieve them. You could get some chocolate, for example, a few trinkets that you wanted to have, or some money to put towards a bigger purchase. I haven't been using this method because I'm not that interested in the rewards themselves in general, but if you are, then that could be a good method to use. However, in the long run, I think you need to find reward in the activity itself to keep doing it. It's easier than you might think to achieve that, and we'll discuss it in the next point. But before that, external rewards might still be useful for one-time specific tasks, or in combination with internal rewards, just to make the process more fun. For example, if you do something or get something after doing X amount of pages that you decided on beforehand. Internal rewards. Results. Focus on the results you will obtain if you do the work. For that, you could mark your progress in a notebook or keep a journal. For example, fill in a checkbox or place a sticker for every page you complete or for every half hour you spend drawing. I keep notes and progress sheets for different things I do, and I like looking at them later and see how I spend my time. I haven't made a progress sheet for my drawing practices yet, but I definitely want to have one. So if I end up making it before I finish this video, I will put it right here. I have told myself that I will keep a folder with all my drawings, and the more I work, the fuller that folder will get, and later I can come back and look at my drawings. Sometimes I pull out my work and go through it just to see what I got done. Seeing finished work might make you want to make more because it might give you a sense of accomplishment that you want to repeat. Environment. This would be, for example, sitting in your favorite spot, maybe enjoying the sun while you practice, or light some incense. Entertainment. Listening to a podcast or a radio show while you practice. It works best if you have repetitive work that you want to go through, but I would recommend leaving some time for you to be alone with your thoughts so that you can observe what you are doing and learn faster. Maybe you tend to like the aesthetic side of things, and in that case you could, for example, decorate the folder that will hold your drawings or the cover of your sketchbook. Using colored pencils or pens could be another way to achieve more attractive results. Coloring the lines or coloring in the shapes could instantly make them pop and bring you some joy without adding much work. Another way I have discovered you can make the page look more aesthetic is by placing the drawings closely together, covering the whole page with your lines. You could also leave a margin all around. The reason that looks better is because there's just more to look at, and so your mind gets the impression of detail. I'm definitely motivated by aesthetics, but I don't do decorating. I just use my pens, simple lettering and layout to make my pages look more interesting. A simple title but carefully written can be enough for me. Having a designated time for your practice when you're not going to be doing anything else than filling the page might be a good way to remind yourself that this is something that you are doing for yourself. It could also be a time to enjoy a beverage you like or get cozy, for example, so that over time you associate these actions with your drawing practice. Or you could listen to some relaxing music. So any of these ideas can be what makes it sustainable and worth for you to keep going. The joy is often in the little things. You also have to have a clear why and build a habit, but these three factors are equally important and go together. So now what? After applying several of the techniques we talked about, I can't wait to fill my new folder with a bunch of practice drawings. By teaching myself, I have already found answers to some questions that I had been asking myself. For example, I never knew how to place people in perspective properly or how to know the height of the objects around them, and now I know. I will leave you with this peaceful plant video that I recently took.
Hope to see you in the next video. Bye.